still gonna take some time, so don't do that. We're about to start now. All right, so Michael, take it away. Good morning. So today we go into the world of deployment. Has been a short week. Remember that. So we have only 3 days, and uh, and there are quite a few things. Maybe not that many, but there are a few things that we need to go deeper into, like cover in more detail. Luckily, we have 2 more weeks after this, so we will cover them. They're going to be part of the lecture. Maybe they're not going to be on the same spot that you see them in other videos, right? If you go and watch prior lectures, there may be some things that I covered in one of those in day 2, and we end up covering that in day 3. But maybe there was something that I covered on that other group on day 3, and then we covered on day 4 here. So we are going to cover all of the content. Don't worry about it. We have been doing okay, but we are pressed a little bit for time. We're missing that one day. It always happens in these weeks. Another thing that has happened to you is you have gotten a little more practice instead of just downloading a totally built project and just building and adding a little bit into that. You have gotten more practice going from empty folder to the project. You and the last group have gotten a little more practice in that. That is a good thing. Okay, going a little slower during the lecture, but having you practice that more over and over again is a good thing, because we have seen through the history of all of our cohorts, you are 21 on the web, right? So you know that we have had at least 21 more, because we had 20 and 2075. So we have seen that sometimes the students get to the build weeks or to the labs project, and they haven't practiced enough that. So we're bringing that into into the content of the week. So this is why you have been, instead of downloading the guided project like we have done today we imported the guided project, but with 2 days of the week we did, from scratch. So you practice a little more of that and get you ask all of your questions for it. Yeah. Does assigning the value rec that name allow you to access it further down the line, like props? Yes, sir. Oh man, that's so good. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna steal that from you. Yeah, it's the same concept, right? It's like having something that you assign on a component, and all the child components that are rendered after that. In the case of, in our case, we don't say they're rendered, but they are middleware that come after that one middleware. They have access to that. It's like having it on props. That is correct. Very nice. Good job. I'm gonna find a way to kind of stick that in my lectures. That analogy is pretty good. All right, so deployment and best practices. Best practice is something that it looks nice here in the title, but really we talk about those as we're talking about like regular code. I may not say, hey, this is a best practice, because there are no best practices. There may be good practices, or there are practices that at a particular point in time, a lot of the developers agree that they're good to follow, but those change. So that's like the way that I see that in my head is like a little kid going after one of those big, beach balls. So every time he gets close enough to grab it, or she gets close enough to grab it, they just kick it with their foot again. Have you seen that? It's so cute. But that's exactly what best practices look like in the industry, right? It's like every time you think you got them, you just give them a little more, a little more. So think of this as something that is embedded within the lectures. And what they're normally boiled down to is, this is a secret, okay? This is every community has secrets that they don't share with the rest of the world. This is a developer secrets. Good practices or best practices are opinion. There's no hard science on any of it, depending on who you ask. So there are just opinions. So what you're gonna see here when I say something like, I think it's better to break up your application into different routers. That's my opinion. Okay, you can take it or not. You can analyze it and say, okay, is this something that I really want to follow? Because there is simplicity on having everything on a single file. You don't have the cognitive load on having to deal with different files. Even in the editor, it's easier to have everything just scroll up and down and that's it. But there's also simplicity in not having to parse through a lot of code when you are looking for something that is probably 2 or 3 lines of code. So there's also simplicity on that. And let me tell you another secret, right? This is another secret. Again, more opinion. See, complexity in code is where bugs hide. They are the hiding place for your bugs in your code. So I keep saying some things, and I know that I'm not probably calling attention enough for it, but one of the things that I normally say in the lectures, and you probably don't really pay attention to it, is that you're not writing code for the computer. You are not. Your job is not to write code for the computer. Your job is, see, code is a communication medium between you and the next developer that's going to work on your code, and it may be you. Okay. So you have to always strive to make your code as simple as possible for the next developer. Simple, not easy. I'm not saying easy. I'm saying simple, easy to understand. That means that your code should read and reveal the intent of the writer. In this case, is you. So when I open somebody else's code and I see something that says calculate tax for employee, I am expecting that if I call that function and I pass an employee ID, I'm going to get the tax for that employee back. If I have a function that says calculate tax and what I get back is shipping costs or tax with a whole bunch of other stuff, that's not telling me the truth. That's the lie. That's code that's lying to me. So again, best practices are going to be those little pieces of opinion that I tell you. Those are going to be, for me, what I think is a good practice. I, above everything else, emphasize or prioritize code readability. Even over, you're going to see really cool implementations of one-liners that I'm going to write in 5 lines. Because in my opinion, it's easier to understand what's going on when you have the 5 lines than it is when you have the one-liner. You will see me do things like every time I do an if, I do a block of code. We all know that you can have an if and a one-liner. If this, and they just put the then in there, you don't need the code block with the curly braces. I will always do it. We also know that you could have like an if with something, and you can return from that if, and then after that, outside of the if, without an else, you can have another line of code because you return inside of the if. But you will see me that I tend to have the else. Again, those are, I think it conveys more of the intent when someone reads, oh, if this is true, then we do this, else we're gonna do this other thing. Instead of having an if return with this and then just a line of code just floating down there. You don't know, is that gonna happen? I mean, we can understand it, we all can, but what if you have a newer member on your team that is just learning JavaScript? Maybe they come from a different language like Python or I don't know, a functional language like Scheme. And this is the first exposure to JavaScript. It may be confusing to them. So remember, it's a little bit of empathy in writing your code. Make it a little more verbose. It doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you why it doesn't matter. If you write promises using then and catch, and I use async and await, and someone else comes in and use some like callbacks, at the end of the day, the compilers are so smart that they may not even use your implementation at all. It is possible that the compiler is going to look at your code, it's going to, there's a better way to do this for the computer. And they're going to take that code of yours, interpret what the intent is, and then write it in the most efficient way for the computer. That is a job of the compiler. And those Google engineers and the Mozilla engineers and the Apple engineers working on those compilers and the Microsoft guys, they have spent a lot of time optimizing and trying different ways of doing that. Let them worry about it, and you worry about writing the code that is easier to understand for a human. If you do that, I guarantee you're going to be loved by your teammates. Nothing worse than opening a piece of code and be like, what is this doing? Because there is some, I don't have the studies, but people say that people have studied this stuff and they have come to numbers. And they say that a lot of our time, they don't agree on the number 70, 75, 80%. A lot of our time is spent reading code. And there is even one that study that went as far as saying, okay, let me see across a lot of developers, how many lines of code do we actually write as an average? And it was like a crazy number, but it was a lot less than what you read. But it was like a small, like the average developer writes like 10 lines of code a day or something like that, new lines of code. The rest is just rearranging or reading code. So keep that in mind. Optimize for readability. You optimize for readability. The compiler optimizes for the computer. All right. So let's talk about deployment. Before we talk about deployment, though, I'm gonna run some code here, and you don't have to. This is important too. I wanna kind of repeat this. Please don't follow along. Don't do it. I will give you time, and I'm moving towards giving you more exercises. And those exercises may be different to the stuff that I have on the screen, and that's my goal, right? So I explain a concept with one example, and then you have an exercise doing something else. And then at the end of the day, you get both, because you have the exercise that you built with the code implementing the same concept, but then you also get the zip file with the code that I implemented here. So you don't have to follow along and repeat it. You're going to have your code with your comments, and you have my code with my comments. So win-win, right? But if you're typing and you're not following along with the explanation and taking the time to stop me and ask me questions right there when you don't get something, you might miss out on a little detail that is critical later. So I know everybody learns different, but I would beg that you please try to stay on the lecture and ask the questions, and then work on your own when I give you the time to do that. And if I'm not giving you the time because something is pretty simple, I just want you to type it, I'll probably just drop it on Slack. So you copy, paste it, and run it. That's it. Okay. Now for today, though, I want to start talking about environment. So I'm going to go into my code and do a little bit of code. So this is already running on localhost 4000. I should have my insomnia running and go and visit. How can I go in here? Like if you were explaining this to me, how can I go and figure out which are the endpoints that I need to use for this? I mean, this is already telling me this in 4000, but what are the endpoints that I need? Where can I go and test this out? What would you do? Can someone walk me through this? Like if I go now and say, you know, let you on mute, can someone, anybody, just jump in and walk me through this, like figuring out which endpoints I can hit on this API? Look in the API folder. Okay, API. There's a router and a server. Where do I go? Talk to me. Come on. Go to the server file. All right, that's great. So we have this API router that we're requiring, but I don't. Oh, okay. Look at the slash that follows it. Okay, so this thing slash API. All right. Okay, so if I go to the API router now, because this is the slash API. Slash API router. Let's see what we have in there. Okay, a router, and oh, okay, we have some endpoints here. So what do you think the URL is now? If you look at those files, we go from here to there. What would be the URL for that? What would be this? This would be a get to what?
Shouts.
Shouts. All right, let's try it out. Let's just do that. So we know that we're in localhost 4000. So let's check. Hey, this is the thing that you showed me how to do, how to create a workspace here. This is gonna be for deployment. This is awesome. It's probably a lot of other things that I don't know how to do here. So slash shouts, right? This is what we think is the URL. Okay, we're gonna do a get localhost. So it's gonna be 4000 slash shouts, and oh, no found. Something's going on.
Is it slash API slash shouts?
Why would that be?
Because in the server.js, where the router is being defined on line 10, we pointed to the API URL.
Oh, all right. I see what you're saying. You're saying that by the time we get here, we know that the URL begins with /API because we're saying that here. This is the only way that this router is going to get executed. So this is actually a combination of both. So /API here plus this at the end. So /API/shouts. Excellent. So this would be the same then. This would be like a post to /API/shouts, right? And what about this one? What would that be? Should be a get to what?
Just /API.
Good job. Let's try it out. Let's try it. Let's try it. Come on. I have faith in this. So it's going to duplicate this one right here, make it, I get to /API. Okay, and this is going to be to /API. Type it. /API/shouts. Excellent. So let's try this one first. The /API would be like so. Boom. This is not working. Oh, /API, sorry, my fault. Here we go, API is up. Let's try this one right here. Stick a /API in front of it, and woohoo! We have some data. Okay, good job. So this is not part of today. This is just, we're talking about this. If I don't know, I'm jumping into a project, that's gonna happen a lot to you. You jump into a project, someone else wrote it. Let me figure out what the endpoints are. What can I do for this? Okay, good job. Now, what we want to do though is we want to have that running. We're going to use Heroku, so I'm going to assume that everybody created their account on Heroku. If not, no, real quick, just fill it up. You're going to get a free account. But now we're saying that this application needs to run in 2 different computers. It needs to run on the computer for the developer that is building it and testing it in the local server. But it needs to run in a different computer, the computer that is going to be on the Heroku data center, right? So part of the jargon that we use as developers is the concept of an environment. In this context, when I say environment, I mean, what I'm basically meaning is the place where my computer is, where my application is running. So think of it any way you want. You think of it as the server, maybe it's the computer when I'm running, or maybe the operating system when I'm running, or maybe the platform when I'm running, whatever. But it's the place, the thing that is running your application. That's the environment. So that means that there are some things inside of that environment. So let's go into we can do it here since we have the server open. I'm going to do this, console.log, and I'm going to say process.env.node_env. Okay, let's give it a name of environment. Now, process.env is how Node.js is going to let your application, is going to give the application an object that is going to have some information about the environment. Let's do this first, because I know we're going to get from that. And so let's do this. Look at that. Oof, that's a lot of information that we have in there. Okay, so this is a huge object that represents the environment of my computer. Yours is going to be different from that because you're running somewhere else. You're not going to be on users Luis. You're going to be on users your name. And if you're in Windows, this is probably going to look different. So there's a lot of information about it. Like it even knows that the shell that I'm using is CSH instead of the bash shell. See how cool that is? It's a lot of information about like the user. Do you want to know the user that is logged in? Your application can read it from process.env. Now, one thing that you will find is that most of the providers, the hosting providers, the places where you can run your code for a Node application are going to give you something called Node. And this is why I was typing that, Node_env. If we save that now, the answer would be surprising. And you don't know what came out next. It's undefined, right? There's a reason for that. If you go look at this big object, it's not defined there. It's not defined on my computer, on my environment, it's not defined. Maybe probably not defined on yours. But Heroku though, Heroku will define that for you. And it's gonna give it a value, okay, when it's defined. So is there a plugin? Oh, there are a lot of plugins for and a lot of things for Bash. I'm not a Linux expert. I am a Windows guy, so I have a hard time with this. I just installed the Oh My CSH terminal, and it seems to give you somewhat that. And they have different themes that you can use. I just picked one, and I'm using that one. This particular default implementation just show you like uh, information about your repository. Like this means this is a Git repository. I'm on the master branch, and here's the name of the project, the repository. So I don't have any to suggest. Just do like command line themes or colors or something, and I'm pretty sure there are quite a few of them. Sorry, I couldn't help. Anyways, so we see that we don't have this environment defined here, okay? But I know this is looking forward to the future, but if we go look into the data folder, there is this thing called db.js. And this db.js is reading some configuration, and we'll learn how to do that next week. Don't worry, you'll build this from scratch. But the point is that we are reading some configuration from, and this is just reading this file. And if we go look at this file, let me kind of walk you through this, but don't try to understand it now. Just understand that this is just JavaScript stuff. So this file just has it's just an object. So it's sending you an object, and it's gonna give you this development environment. Okay, and this is an object that configures your connection to the database. So at the end of the day, if I require this, all I'm really getting is something that is an object that has a development key in there. So we agree on that. If you have any questions, just drop it there. I also see you're in your VS Code. I'll look at it later. What do you mean? Yeah, but let me address this. I still get some colors, like if I go into CD, no 21. See, I get a little bit of color in there too. It's part of the same terminal. So if we go into the, what do we call this? Shout, I think. Yep. See, we get the same information. It's just the colors are a little different. And you can actually, there is a terminal, there's an option here. You can edit the colors of the terminal if you want to do that. It works across. So anyways, what we're getting is an object that has the development key with some information in there. That's what we get. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing using the square brackets notation. If I wanted to have something from there, we could do it this way. We could say, let's say that we call this config. We could say config.development. That is one way of doing it. Right? If I get to when I get to that key, but I can also do it like this. I could say config square brackets and then a string that says development. Okay. So those are two different ways of taking that object that we get from this and getting at the development key. I could do it with the dot notation or passing on square brackets, passing a string. This is what we're doing here. So that we can do this dynamically, right? I'm saying, hey, if I have this defined, I want you to use it. And this is going to be important when we deploy to Heroku, right? When we deploy to Heroku, if we want to access the database, we're going to ask Heroku, hey, use whatever Heroku gives you as the node_env. But if I am locally on my computer, I want you to use development. Cool? If I don't have it defined, not on my computer, if I don't have it, if I don't find it, I want you to use development. So this is a way for me to use information that is on the environment somewhere in the computer where my stuff is running to make decisions within my code of what do I want to use. A good use for this is let's imagine something. Again, you're not typing anything not yet. Let's imagine that I had like a folder here called maybe, I don't know, config. Okay. And inside of this folder, let's say that we have some defaults. And maybe we have another file called, not a folder, but another file called secrets. Okay. So I don't have anything inside them, but let's say that we have couple of files, and maybe this config defaults sets all of the defaults that my system is going to use. And you can have different ones. Like maybe you have a configuration for the database, configuration for other things. So I'm going to look specifically at the secrets one. I'm going to keep the other one just to give you an idea. You can have more than one file, right? But let's say that in the secrets, I want my application, when I'm using it on development, maybe my application is going to connect to a database, but I'm using a test database that I have running on my system. But when I deploy to, let's say, testing, which is another environment that maybe looks like production, but we test our application there before we deploy it to our users. We do things that, you know, we need to make sure the application is working. So what if I have some credentials that are to connect to that testing database, and they're different from the credentials that I have on my computer? But then when we deploy to production, someone else is going to do that, not you probably, someone in operations. They have the real credentials for the production database. And when you are in working in companies, most of the time, the developers don't need access to those credentials. It's important that you don't get them if you don't need it. That you say, I don't want to know, okay? To minimize the risk, those credentials are kept by someone else. That is the person responsible for securing those credentials. But also you may have API keys, like maybe your application is sending emails. The API key that costs money, every time you send an email costs money, that is used in production, only the people that control that manage and are responsible for it know that information. But they might give you a development key. They say, okay, when you're working, you're going to use this development key because this development key is used to, you know, with another service. So those secrets should never go into your GitHub repository. Okay. So what do? Well, you provide some defaults, you provide some messaging, but let's say that I have here, I want to export something, module.exports. It's going to be an object. And let's say that I have my Google API key. Okay. So what I'm going to say is, in production, I want my application to read this stuff from the environment. So I'm going to say process.env. And who's going to do this? Whoever manages the production servers. In the case of Heroku is going to give you a way for you to add environment values in there. And maybe this is going to be, and one thing that you'll see is like it's like an agreed upon thing. When you have environment variables, they're normally using a screaming snake case. So if I have like Google API key, would be like this, like all uppercase. And then underscore, this is where the snake comes from, API key, right? So it would be something like this. And any other keys, like your database keys, all of those keys, they could be now centralized in this place where all your secrets are there. And then you say, well, what if I don't have it? Because locally I'm not going to have it. So then I provide a default value. And I say, okay, if not, then I'm just going to use this, you know, fake Google API key. That's the key that I'm going to be using. Cool. Now, there are ways for you to define when you run an application. Let me show you something, right? If we go in here on the server, remember that we ran this and it said that the environment is undefined. But let me show you this. I am running in a Mac. So I could do something like this. I could say node underscore env. It's going to be equal to, you know, Luis. The name of my computer, by the way, is the Hawk. Okay, and then node index.js. So I'm running the application client. Yeah, I'm getting this error, but look at the environment. So ignore this error. The reason for that is if I am looking for an environment called Hawk, and we go and look at the connects file in there, there is no key there. It's only the development. So it's looking for something that says Hawk as the environment. That's what I was trying to do. So when I ran it, of course, we got an error. It's going to tell me I don't have any, this should have like a client and other information in there. So that's why I'm getting the error. But the point is, look, I am reading the environment now. I was able to set it when I ran this. Now, if we run it without that, npm run server, okay, since I am not setting the environment when I'm running it out just with run server, it's going to go back to being undefined. So that means that in my computer, I have a way of setting it up. Now on Windows, it's going to be different. Windows uses, I think, set in order for you to set the environment. So how do we normalize this so that we can just pretend that we have access to that information without having to know how to do it separately depending on the operating system? For that, we're going to use an npm package. So we're going to go into npmjs.org, and there is this .m.env package, and I'm going to link this to you, and you're going to have your first exercise of the day. Okay, and the exercise here is, see if you can figure out how can I set the node environment so that on this console log, I see the name or development in there. So your exercise, use that. Use .env somehow to change env, and again, it's going to be on process.env.not.env to read development. Go. That's your first exercise of today. I'm going to give you, even if 5 minutes might not be enough to figure it out, but let's take 5 minutes to do that. In your server.js, make sure that you have this line there. And if we get it to work correctly, this line should now console log environment development. As soon as you figured it out, save that, add, commit, push it, and drop a link to that commit on your TL channel if you're done before the 5 minutes. I will address the question, Carlos, don't worry. Concentrate on getting it done, pushing your commit, and dropping that link on your TL channel. You are to figure out if you add that line to the server.js file, this is going to console log here that the environment is undefined. Your job is to make this console log that the process.env.not.env is development. Set it to be development. that make sense? So your console log should read, if it's done, it should read environment development, like so. Should log this message to the console. That without the quotes. That's how you know you figured it out. So what you're trying to do is see if you can use that package to add something to process.env called node.env, and the value of it is going to be development. Index.js, did I change anything in there? I don't think I have anything changed in there. It's the same one that you have. Hmm. It's kind of unfair that I'm asking you to do something without explaining or teaching you how to do it. Just by going and reading the documentation is like preposterous. Believe it or not, it's so good that you get to do this, because that's going to be your life, figuring that stuff out. All right, so time's up. Stop what you're doing, add commit and push, and drop that commit link in your TL group. Okay. Take a minute to do that. Even if it's broken, even if you're not done, we still want to see that commit. How far do you get? Okay, in those 5 minutes. That's data. All right. So if I was doing it, someone told me, hey, you need to figure this stuff out, and they tell me use this .env package because that's what we do, and I never done it. I would read this and say, okay, so this module loads environment variables from a .env file, so I need that, into process.env, which is exactly what we want to do. And by the way, there's a good reading here to a factor app and what that means. So this is how we do it. All right, we need to do npm install.env. So let's go and do that. I'm gonna stop this server for a minute. And it's important to stop it because environment variables are read at the beginning of the application, so you still have to stop it anyway. So npm i.env. What's next? And as early as possible in your application, require and configure this file. So we're gonna use this one-liner as early as possible. So as early as possible for me is gonna be the first file, index.js. So we're gonna add it in here somewhere. Okay, so like that. I just copied it from the documentation. So as early as possible, I'm gonna run this line. This is gonna require the module and call the config method in it. Okay. Now this is still talking about this .env file. Okay. So now it says create a .env file in the root directory of your project. Oh, let's go do that. So inside of the root directory of the project here, we're gonna do a new file called .env. Okay, that's done. What do we do with that? Let's see. And add the specific variables on new lines in the form of the name equals the value. So for example, if I take one of these examples, and I'll take this one right here, drop it in here, and it says that it's separated by a new line. So I see this is why I have like this, new line, new line, new line. And now what I want to have is node underscore env, and the value that we want for this is development. So following the instructions there, looks like that's it. Looks like we're done. Let's try it out. So let's run the application, npm run server, and hopefully this is not working. This is wrong. Why is this not working? Okay, let's see. Node.env equals development, and this should be happening as early as possible. So I wonder if this is not early enough. I don't know. I'm gonna start like moving things around and figuring out, is this in my root? It is. It's called .env.
I think it worked.
I think you need to put the require in the server.js instead of the index.
Okay, let's see. I just moved that here.
Yeah, move that to the server.
Okay, no. Here's the thing. Okay, I had it, and so you know what I did, right? I had it here on purpose. If you go see all of my videos, you'll see that eventually it's got to be at the top. But I am requiring this file, right? And this file is executing, running this line, but we have not loaded this yet. See? Now, and then I see the error, and it's like, okay, let me see if I'm just moving it to the top here. And I'm hoping now that, yes, here it is, right? The reason is we need to load it before we need to use the environment. Okay? So by having it down here, it's a way to trick, and it's like, why is it not working for me? A couple of things may have happened. First, you need to stop the server and restart it, but then you have to run this line before you need it, before you need the information. So this is why, if you go look at the videos and the examples, it's always going to be like the first line that I write, even before requiring anything else. Just to make sure that any other code that needs that has it, because it's like the very first line that it reads. And that's it. So now we have, through this file, a way to change the environment variables for our computer, for our development environment. It doesn't matter whether we're in Windows, Linux, it doesn't matter. We can now use this package for that. Now, the beautiful thing about this is we're talking about secrets, right? We said, well, we have the secrets file, and we may have things here like the environment and database information and all that. This is going to be loaded into process.env. And if we want to have like different credentials for our computer, for our development environment, we don't want those keys being pushed to GitHub. That's what we're saying, okay? So what are we going to do with this? Well, we need to ignore that. But if you go check out the git ignore that Node.js, like the people from GitHub produced, you will find in there .env. See, they know that we should ignore environment variables for that file. So if you're using the git ignore from Node, then that's already there. If you're building one from scratch, you have to make sure that you ignore the .env file that is not pushed.
So Louis, can I ask, is it wrong to put your .env package in your server instead of the index? I guess the index, you said put it in the index ahead of everything, so anything that needs it gets it.
No, it's not wrong. You just have to make sure that you define it before you have to use any information from there.
All right, thank you.
So if we do it here on the server, it would totally work. It would work even right here, like right before the console log, because by the time this line runs, you already loaded those defaults. So it will work that way too. See? It's fine.
That's the way I've always done it, and I just want to make sure I wasn't incorporating a bad practice.
So you're saying that there are good practices?
Yeah.
I just play it safe and make it like the first line, like all my environments, and then the rest of the application loads. But yeah, that totally works. Okay, so again, you have to make sure that this is ignored if you're going to have some quick, because you might have a development key in there. You don't want that pushed to GitHub. So if that means that everybody and anybody that clones this repository needs to have, if they want to have their own credentials for their local database, they need to add them to that file. Another thing that you could do though is in the secrets file here, like let's say that I wanted to have that default, I could say, you know, environment. And then copy the stuff that I was doing. Well, let's just stop here, typing. So process.env, and I'm going to run the node env from here. And if I don't have one, we can provide the development here as a default. So that's something that you're going to see a lot. Now, why going through the extra step of creating an extra file for that configuration? So that we have one place where we have that. So now anybody that needs this thing, instead of having to read it, let's say, just go to the server, we no longer need to read it directly from there. I could just say, okay, let's go and require. Let's call it secrets equals require. And then we are where? We are on API. So we need to step out of there, go into the config and grab this secrets file. Okay, now that we have that, I could say out of there, what I'm console logging really is secrets that environment. That doesn't really, it's more like a default. They should be in defaults, okay? Ignore that. Should be in defaults, right? The defaults, the environment. But also, that means now that I could copy this, and anywhere else that I need those defaults, like in the data folder, I'm grabbing that instead of having two places where I have to make the decision. Like if I change the way that I access that, if it's not going to be called node env, maybe it's just called environment now. Now I have to go and change it everywhere I was using it. In this simple example, I'm having it like in one place and then the console log. But imagine that you have a value that you need in different places on your app. If you change the way that you get it, you need to change it on every place. Now I am centralizing this on a single config file. So all we have to do is bring that config file and just grab it from there. Secrets.environment. Now we can reuse this, and we kept it dry. Okay. So this is the file that knows how to find the secrets. This is the file that knows how to find the defaults. Again, I feel bad because this should be on the default. And this still works for this, and it also should work for the database. So if I go into this and do a send, yep, my database still works. Questions so far? Should we have them? No. Remember, this is opinion. This is me organizing stuff. No need for you to do any of it yet. We're gonna go and I want to let you build it your way. Every one of you could have a different structure. I'm just modeling something that I would use. Okay. Let's get rid of this data here. So, questions about the environment. Do you understand like the process of the environment? No? Ask questions. Ask. What is the environment? What is it that I can put in there? So the purpose of this is that you can have an application that's running on your computer and you're not using the production database, your development, and I'm gonna give you an example of the production of the database stuff, right? But I'm gonna give you another example now. What happens when I run this? This is gonna be running on a port on my computer. It's running on 4,000. Yours can also be running on 4,000. So let me ask you this. When I deploy this application to Heroku, are all of the applications that we deploy to Heroku gonna be running on port 4,000? No, they cannot. Because when someone visits Heroku and they go to 4,000, which application is gonna serve the request? So that means that Heroku needs to give you a different port. So locally, you get to choose your port. On Heroku, you don't get to choose the port. So if I ask you, how do you solve the problem of on your computer is going to be running on a port, and on Heroku, you got to let Heroku pick one? And the way that you do that, every time you have something in your application that is going to be different depending on where the application is running. So it's going to be different depending on the environment. Then you need to figure out a way to make that dynamic. The port is one of those examples. Now, I don't know if all of them, but I think all of the ones that I know where you can host applications, they're going to give you an environment variable. So if I go in, actually, I'm going to go into this here, module.exports. Exports is going to be an object. And this object is going to have a port. I'm just going to read it from process.env.port, uppercase. And if I don't have one, then I'm going to pass in 4,000 as the port. Okay, so now I have a default. I have a place where I have all those defaults. Of course, the environment would be there too. So what I'm saying is, when I move this to somewhere else, they're going to give me a port environment variable that I can use. If it's not defined, then I'm going to use 4,000. Now, in the index.js, instead of reading this directly, no, I'm gonna go in there and say, you know what? I'm gonna bring in my defaults. And this is gonna be coming from /config/defaults.js. Okay, so instead of having the port be that, right, Shift Command K, delete that line and say, no, bring this and read it from the defaults that port, like so. Okay, and then again here, defaults that port. So the purpose of the environment is to have a place that you can go and change values dynamically depending on where the application is running. And this is a genuine need, okay? So I have an error. What is this? Shut out in there, car stack, default port. Did this? Defaults, that port. Modular exports port.
It's default, defaults.
What did I do? Oh, default. It's defaults. Don't require. Here we go. Good eye. I missed that. So that's the purpose of this. Every time you have something that needs to change depending on where the application is running, this is a good candidate to be placed on that process.env. This library just makes that process easy. It gives you a way for you to define those on the .env file. Now, this is not how you define that on the production environment. The production environment is going to give you that value, right? What you're saying is, I'm going to read this from the production environment. Where's my defaults? Here it is. I'm going to read this from the production environment for process.env. Someone is going to give me that. And it's different depending on where you are. But if I don't have one, I'm going to read it from there. Now, if I have a value though, like in the case of the secrets, if I do have a value that I want to set on my environment, I could set it like a Google API key. Maybe I have one for development. I have that value. So I can set it. But I'm still not pushing it, right? I'm still not pushing it. But even if I did push that, because think about it, I'm saying don't push your .env file because it's going to have your secret key. But I am telling you, push this file. And this file is telling you, yeah, it's reading this from the environment. And if not, you're going to have a fake value here. So this is not your key. Your key is in the .env file. There are going to be times where you have like database connections and information that you do have one that you use, but you don't want that being on GitHub. So that stuff goes on the actual value goes on .env. But the way that you read them, you have that in a file that you centralize that. It's the same thing that you do whenever you have something that you need to use in more than one place. Instead of copy and pasting that, you centralize it in a place. So if the way that you get to that value changes in the future, if I let it decide that this is going to be called, Google key only, I don't have to go and change it everywhere I'm using it. I just come in this place because everybody else on the application is using this value instead. Okay, so this is JavaScript now. This is me making it so that I can centralize the way that I read the Google API key in a single place. And the .env is how I hide it, by not pushing to my GitHub repository, but I let the production of the other environment set it. So I can use mine, you can use yours. And then the production is going to have a different one. And what the application is doing is, if it's set, I'm going to read it from here for the Google key on the environment. Let's go look at the defaults, because this is the one that is going to kind of bring it home for you. We're looking for this process.env port. We don't have it. Okay, it's not defined on our environment, so we're going to use 4000 as default. And it should run fine. I mean, the application continues to work locally. But even better, when I push this application to Heroku on the next step, which is let's deploy this and see if we can get it to run there. Heroku now has a chance to, just by setting this port, it's going to change where your application runs. We're going to get a break now. It's like we're on the hour. Cool. So let's do that. Let's go take the break right now. And then we'll see you back in 5 and we're going to deploy that to Heroku. So here are the notes on training kit, how to make report dynamic, link, and the explanation. Okay, some examples on how it works. And we are back and we have questions. Aha, questions are good. Okay, one question says, can you, oh wait, is there another one that I'm missing? That's for sure. So a structure of an environment, a structure requirements, it's just for you, when you read it, it's just a JavaScript object with key value pairs. When you define it, it's always going to be a key value pair, but it's going to be separated by an equal sign. And the value is always going to be a string, some of the requirements. So anything more complicated than the key value in an .env file? No, because the .env file is a standard and it's telling you exactly how to do it. It's always going to be key equals a value, and the value could have, quotes. The quotes are going to be ignored in that case, but key value is good, so don't add noise there. Key value, and you could have like a value with spaces, still going to work because it's going to read everything to the end of the last value, to the end of the value, right? So that's the structure of a .env file. And the way that you separate one key value pair for the next is by having a new line like that. So the answer to that is nope. That's the structure of a .env file. You cannot have tunnel or anything like that in there. So do we use secrets or .env or both? Your choice. Okay. The reason I'm using the secrets or the default.js file is so that I have in my code, this is for me, for organizing my code, a single place where I make the decision of how to read, let's say, the port or any secret. So this is just for me, it's like creating a component. It's reusability of the same component, just so that the code that defines the way the component behaves is on a single spot. At the end of the day, what's important is that when you need something that is going to change depending on where the application is running, you set it up so that your application reads that from the environment. And then you have each environment configured. Okay. Which brings me to another question that I have in here that says, do we need to define it, or will it be automatically done for us? When we deploy to Heroku, Heroku is going to give us some things depending on what you have in your application. Heroku is going to set some environments for you automatically. One of them is the port, uppercase port. That's going to be set up by Heroku automatically for you. If you're deploying to any other environment, you have to figure out what the environment is going to give you, right? So I know Netlify gives you also the port. Azure, if you use their services, they're going to give you the port. And depending on the services that you have, they're going to give you others. But they will tell you, their documentation of the place you're using to deploy is going to tell you the stuff that's available for you to use. And if it is in your company, someone else is deploying in your company, your servers, you're going to tell them, hey, I need a way to change the port. So give me an environment variable for that. And in those cases, you might even drive it, say, okay, here's I want you to create this environment for me. Cool. The only important takeaway of this is every time you need to change something depending on the environment, you're going to set your application to read it from the environment and then figure out how to set it. That's what's important. Now, if you want to have in your environment some secrets, some values that you don't want to have in GitHub, and you want to be able still to use them on your environment, then this is where the .env comes in. It's a good way for you to have a way to quickly set your environment variables without having to know the commands manually. Okay. Let me see, what else do we have here? The git ignore, it was asked, is that going to be added? Yes, when you do git ignore node, it's going to be added for you automatically, which is cool. And yep, that's it. That's all the questions that we have. So let's go and set up continuous deployment on Heroku. And by continuous deployment, I mean a nice workflow where you make changes, commit and push, gets deployed. Imagine that. You make your changes, you commit and push, and it gets deployed automatically for you. That's what continuous deployment is about. We're going to set that up on Heroku. So here I'm going to do this in the multiple steps so that it's important that now you're going to be following along with me, right? So I'll tell you when to go and do what I did. So the first thing is we're going to create an app. So new, create new application. You may have a big button here that says new application. Just hit that, new application, and give it a name. Mine is going to be called LS Shouts. Okay, boom. That's it. That's the first step. Go and create the app. Let me know when you're done, please. Not app created. Why am I doing it so slow? Because there's a lot of moving parts here. And remember them all, it's hard. So let's go and do this so that we can make changes. Okay. Steps. Create new app on Heroku. That's the stuff that we did. Okay, still working on it. Let's call it deploy. Does it have to have a unique name? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It totally does. I'm going to put that in the notes. Create a new app. You can name it anything you want. Just give it any name. Don't worry. Don't worry about the naming. All right, I see no thumbs down, so I'm going to continue to the next step. Okay. So on the next step, unless I see a no. On the next step, we're going to go to the deploy tab. And then we're going to click on GitHub here. Okay. When you do that, the first time it's going to give you a warning of you need to authorize Heroku to read your repositories. So click on GitHub, the GitHub tab, and you know, consent to the security warning. Do that. So yes, no, done. Let me know. If you're still working on it, just answer no. If you're good, you don't need to click the no. I just want to see the no's. I see a no that showed up later on the other question. You're running into an issue when creating the app? Can we help? We want to help. We want to help. We always want to help. It could be a branch. You make your choice. If you have branches, you could point it to the branch for sure. No, we're working on the repo that I posted on Slack that said, note, this is not the repo on TK. But you can use that. And by the way, you should have imported that into your account, right? So you're talking about your repo, not Landa's repo. So it should be on a repository that's under your name. So when you sort that one out, I'm gonna move to the next step because this is gonna happen on GitHub. You just need to have one repository that is on your name so that you can push changes to it. So the process is you're going to make changes, commit and push. You can't push to the Lambda repository. So it's gotta be one under your name. So get that done. Okay, so we're gonna continue in this case while he works on that. So the next step would be, once you consent to GitHub, you'll be able to look for your repositories here. So you have to make sure, like in my case, I have 2 organizations that you are on your name, if you have more than one, and then find the repository. And this is gonna be the name of the repository that you have in GitHub. If you don't remember, you click enter, it's gonna show you all of them. So I think mine is called shouts. So I'm gonna do shout, enter, or search, and see if I find it. Yeah, there it is. So the next step would be search for your repository on GitHub. Okay, type a search term here, click search, and this is gonna find you the list. And then once you find it, click connect. Okay. So at this stage, I'm gonna stop here and ask if you're good. This should say GitHub connected, and it should have the name of your repository under your name, and have this disconnect button. It's got to look like this. So this is telling us that you are totally connected to GitHub. So let's see where we are. Let's do a yes, no. I am connected. Good. Connections are important. This is how you get jobs. Networking. Because you missed it, the answer was yes, you can use a branch. You just have to pick the branch here for deployment. By the way, step so far. All right, nobody's at a no, so let's go to the next step. Once that is connected, now we need to pick a branch, especially if you're not working on master. Like I was working on master, so I only have one branch, but you have to pick the branch that you want to deploy from this list, and then click on enable automatic deploys. So choose the branch to deploy and click enable automatic deploys. Is that what it reads? Automatic deploys, yes. So I'm gonna click that. Boom. Aha. So now we have, it should look like this. Automatic deploys from master are enabled. We'll ask again, yes, no. Check. Automatic deploys, check. Apply. So it should look like this. How are we doing, Carlos? Were you able to import that repository and connect it? Catching up, a little bit of catching up. Import takes a little bit, so it may be a little slower for you. Haha, we have two Carloses here. Good. All right. So while he sets that up, he'll catch up. We have the steps here, don't worry. So the next step is, I like to do this to get one first deployment like fired up right away, okay, without having to do a push to GitHub. So I'm gonna try to do this. I'm gonna deploy, click deploy branch once, right? And it should be deploying, and it's gonna tell you, hey, I'm doing all of this stuff, okay? So click deploy branch. I'm gonna add this to the steps. And then go to the overview tab. Okay, overview, maybe like this tab. Okay, let's go there. So scroll up and go to the overview tab right here. And this is gonna tell you on the latest activity line, it's gonna tell you when this was built and when it was deployed. Okay, now it tells me that it was just deployed. So once it is deployed, click on open app, I think is what it says on the top right. I think so, let me see. Open app, yes, right here, top right, open app. So we're gonna click open app, and it fails. Of course it fails. Where does it say that? Oh, this is the stuff. No, we don't have that. So don't click that. Notice that we don't have it checked. Continuous integration is something you can set up on your GitHub repository on like do things like change some values, do some processes, and most importantly, run your tests. So you could say, hey, I want to make sure that my server on GitHub run all the tests and they all pass before we deploy. So keep that off because we don't have that set up. Okay. Now, your result from open it might be different from mine. Mine gave me an error. Like spin, and then gave me an error. Now, you can do these things, right? It's telling you, you can check the logs with the tail and all that. You can check your logs for details. So this is a command that you can run. Like if you do this, let me show you. We copy that command and go to a terminal somewhere. Let me open up a terminal here. Doesn't have to be on Visual Studio Code. It's probably a good idea to have it running on a terminal somewhere. And if you have Heroku installed globally, you could just type that and it's gonna do something magical. But if I don't have it installed, I could do npx Heroku logs. I think I do have it installed though. So if I read that, it's gonna ask me for the app name. So how can I know what my application name is in Heroku? Right there at the top, see what it says, personal, ls shouts. This little thing right here, this is my application name. So when I try to do that command, notice that it's telling me, I need to know, you may have 20 applications. Which application do you want? Give me the -a flag. So let's do it this way. Heroku logs -a ls shouts, and then we're gonna do that. I think I could. I don't know if the order matters. I think it doesn't. I don't have access to this. Oh no! I have no access to my application. That's ls shouts. I'm missing. Oh, I'm missing one s. It's like, what do you mean I don't have access? This is my app. Now, if you give it the right name, though, there you go. So basically what this is doing with that command, it is streaming to your terminal real time, kind of, what's happening with your application. So if you have console logs, they will show up there. So this is telling me, okay, this is what happened. You release this, and then build succeeded, and then I start, oh, look at this, error. Look at the error. Can someone help me troubleshoot this error? It's telling me missing script start. Ooh. What can I do to fix it? Oh, I need to add one to package.json. All right, let's go do that. So if we go open package.json, we need, oh, it's true. I don't have a start script here, so let's add it. Okay, so it's got to be called start because that's what Heroku is looking for. Yeah, but what do I put in there? Okay, let's see. It looks like it's starting, and when they say process, they mean they're starting your application. It's trying to start my application using npm start. Oh, so they're trying to use that to run the application. Okay, cool. So can I do this then? Nodemon index.js. Would that work? Yeah, but it's lame. It wouldn't work though, because if you look at this, nodemon is only a dev dependency, and now you're gonna see why we have two. You see, some things you use only during development, you don't want that code pushed to your production application. Every line of code that is on your production application is a danger. It can go out of date, it can have vulnerabilities. So nodemon is not an exception. So if you don't absolutely need it in production, it should be a dev dependency. That means even if I do write, nodemon index.js, that's not going to run on Heroku. It's just going to give me an error that says, I don't have it because I looked through the dependencies and I installed those for your application. So is there another way that I could run applications written in Node without using nodemon? And the answer is yes, I could use Node to run them. I know that's going to be installed in there. I noticed the platform. So now you start seeing the difference. When you're working in development, we're using nodemon because it needs to restart every time we make changes. When it is in production, though, we're not gonna be making changes directly. The process of adding changes in production is we're gonna make the changes locally and we're gonna commit and push to the branch. And then Heroku is going to be watching that branch and is going to deploy from that branch. So it is not until I push to the branch that Heroku is watching that the changes are going to be deployed. Okay. So that said, just changing and adding this star script is not going to fix my application. If I want Heroku to be aware of this, what do I need to do? Look at the notes. We just made the change. We need to commit and push, and then it's gonna get deployed. So git add. Wow, so slow. So let's check out the good status. Okay, that seems to be good. Git commit, and what would be a good message for this? Like,
added support code.
Yeah, makes the port dynamic, and we have more other stuff that we did in there. And git push, it's gonna push to master, right? If you push into a branch, push to your branch. So let's make sure that we have that change here on my branch, and we should have something related to make port dynamic. So if we go back to Heroku though, go to the overview, you'll see that in a few seconds to a minute, you're gonna see this going on. This is the build progress. This is checking, and you click on that link and it's gonna show you what's going on. Okay, no vulnerabilities, just installed all my packages. Now this is doing, oh, by the way, remember that we had those logs on the terminal? Let's go check that out. Oh, look at that. Real time, this is coming. Oh man, an error. He failed. Oof. Cannot read property client of undefined. Look at the environment. See the environment? The environment that Heroku set is called production. See that? So what that means is that the code that we have in DB.js is looking for a value of, why? Because Heroku now is giving us that process, that env, that not, remember that, I think we have on secrets, yep. So this value is actually set on Heroku to production automatically for you. So if we want this to work, we need to go in here. And again, this is something that you're gonna have to do and just do it now. And you learn why that works. Connects.js file, and we're gonna copy this and change it to have a name of production. Okay, so go ahead, open your connects file, copy the development underneath it, and give it a name of production. Oh, the command for Heroku? It's not there. Let me just type it. So you're gonna type, if you don't have Heroku installed, npx Heroku, and you need to know the name of your application for this. So let's do logs, and then -a, and then the app name. Okay, change the app name for that, and then do --tail. And tail just means, you know, show me the end. Keep updating it. Show me the whatever commands are new. Just stream it to me. So you could do that on any terminal. Make sure that you have your app name. The first time you run it though, it's gonna ask you to add your username and password for Heroku. Mine is already set up, but if you run it for the first time, it's gonna say, hey, what's your Heroku username? What is your Heroku password? So that I can guarantee that you have access to this application. Okay. Every time you don't have a package globally installed, just stick npx in front of it and space, and then run your command normally. Or you could just do npm i-g Heroku and just have it installed globally like I have. That's one of the things that I have because it's used a lot. All right, so again, we have this problem because our environment now is looking for a production key. So this is why we changed in the Kinect file.js, we copy that development to production and give it a different name, the production name. But what's important here is that I want you to understand, Heroku is giving you a port, but it's also giving you a node_env. That's very common amongst providers of hosting services. So if you go to Amazon Web Services, it is 100% guaranteed that you're going to have those two things that you can use for your node applications. Same with Google Cloud. Same with, what do you call this other one? Microsoft Azure. They all give you the node environment. They all give you the port and a few others. So I just copied the development object and changed it to be production. So that when Heroku reads the production thing, it's gonna get the same configuration that we have on development. Now, is this gonna fix it for me? No, what do I need to do now? You know, I need to do a git add, do the git commit, maybe with a different message. Now it's gonna, you know, in this case, I added production configuration, boom, git push. And again, this is the process for you. So my application crashed. I'm doing a push. Hopefully that's gonna make it to, there you go. All right, it's aware that I just did a push. And it's gonna start the build. Let's see what breaks now. Oh, look at that. This time the build succeeded, okay? It found the NPM start. It's running on the production environment, and the server is running on this weird port right there, 11,129. The funny thing is, if I stop it and run it again, it's gonna run on a different port. Why? Because Heroku is gonna change that for me. It's gonna give me a dynamic port that no one else is using. This is now assigned to me. While my application is running, this port is assigned to me. So if anybody goes and visits my application on Heroku, it's gonna be running from this port. It doesn't matter, they control that. They give me the port, I just have to use it in my application. So now let's go and refresh our app and let's see where we are so far. This is probably gonna just tell me, ooh, I don't have anything here. Let's try the shouts, slash shouts. Should have, slash API, slash API I think, right? Slash API slash shouts. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Look at that. We have data, okay? So the learning here is the process. The process is once you set it up once, pointing to the, remember, I'm using master, but if you have a branch, pointing to the branch that you want to deploy, okay? You set that once, and then from then on, you go into this loop, this process where you make a change, commit and push, and it gets deployed. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. It's not like instant, right? So how can you check? Well, you don't have to have this thing running all the time. All you have to do is go to the overview tab. You go to the overview, and the overview is always updating. Whenever you make a change, it's gonna update here. Make a change, update here. So since we already have those shouts there, the shouts is something that requires a message. This is how you push to it. So I'm gonna drop my address on Slack so that you can post a message in there for your fellow peers. So if you take that, new request, Heroku, it's gonna be a post with a JSON body, create that, and the JSON is gonna have a message. Hello, team. Oh, no. To all, this is a shout to all Node 21 developers. Send that. Oh, it's hey, where's my URL? Oh, there it goes. I forgot to paste it. There we go. So if we go now and refresh, here you go. To all Node 21 developers. That's my shout to you. Okay. So once you get deployed, you can go ahead and post the link to your API on your TL channels. So you can shout each other. Of course, we have separate databases, right? The stuff that I have on my database, you're not gonna have. So your database is gonna have different stuff. And there is a problem. Oh man, this is a nasty one. You see, Heroku will just wipe out your hard drive. And the database that we're using is actually a file, right? If you look at it, I mean, you're gonna learn about this next week. But if you look at where the data is stored, it happens to be stored on this shouts db.3 file. So whenever Heroku does a wipeout and gets the original code back, you only get the stuff that you have original in that file on GitHub. So that means that the shouts that I just added, if I redeploy, it's just they're gonna get wiped out. So the way that we change that, we normally do it at the end, the last lecture, is instead of using that local file, we use Postgres, a database server that you can use that is separate from your application. And Heroku happens to have a service where they give you access to a database server. Okay. Now, this is a little more advanced, and you're not going to understand it even if we do it. But if you want, we can do it. And that way you can have at least one application that is set up using Heroku DB, and it will persist the information. I'll give it up to you. You think that's something that, if not, you can just ask questions, and I am pretty sure, 100% sure that someone is running into issues. So ask those questions. Let's see. Install invalid credentials provided. Yeah, that's telling you that you have to log in. Okay. And the credentials that you're gonna use is the username and password that you used for Heroku. It's not your email, it's not your GitHub. It's whatever you use when you signed up for Heroku. If you signed up for Heroku and you're using your GitHub account, then it's gonna be probably your GitHub credentials. But I think it should be your GitHub credentials. Anybody running into problems with access? No, in my case, so it's gonna work for you. But if you do make those changes, you know how to solve them. All you have to make sure is that you copy the configuration, the Connects file, to have also that production key. Yeah, the Connects code is just copying the development and giving it a name of production. There's no new code, so don't worry about it. We haven't done anything weird yet. I'm gonna drop it in here anyways. There you go. So I just took this and copied it and changed the name from development to production. That's what I did. Yes. Oh, access lost me at the terminal part. So when you try to deploy, if you're doing the terminal thing for the logs, that's asking you for your GitHub credentials. You have to make sure, even though you probably don't see the password or anything, you have to make sure that you're using the same username and password that you use for Heroku.
It's not giving me that option.
It's not. Well, that's nasty. That's nasty. Let's go see if I can fix it.
It's asking me to log in.
Yeah.
And automatic window is popping up. I click that. It says.
Oh yes, they have a nice thing. It's gonna open on the browser, and then you sign in the browser, and then you go back, right?
Right, and then it's telling me that it was the incorrect credentials, and it's logging me out.
This is a bug. Let's go share. Let's do it together once at least.
Okay.
I'm gonna apply for a job at. I'm gonna apply for a job at Heroku. It's like, fix your problems. It's pretty cool though, the way that they're doing it.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got information denied. All right, so let's try the command again for Heroku.
Okay. What was that? NPX.
Heroku log. Oh, right there. Heroku logs -- tail, but then you have to give it the app. So npx. And then And then right after logs, it could be, yeah, I think you have to do it after Heroku, I think.
Yes.
Mhm. I think it could be
After Heroku, after
yeah, so
logs.
it could be somewhere in there. I think logs and then space /a and then the name of the application. But before you hit enter though, I want you to go and show me what, type it here first and then let's go and check that that's the application. What is the name of your app? Okay. All right, hit it. Hit it! Hit it!
That could be where I was missing it.
Yeah, if you have a type on the app, what's gonna happen is you're gonna try to access somebody else's app, not yours. So your
Got it.
credentials are fine, but there's like you have no access to it. This is not your application. What are you doing? Hacker! No,
So
you're a hacker.
So how do I get this where I don't have to actually use this whole?
Oh no, you don't have to do it. I just showing you when you have errors. This is a nice way for you to look at what's going on. But if you go to you don't need to do this. You could go to the page and hit the overview tab, and it's gonna tell you when it's deployed. So if you
Okay.
go to Heroku without having this running, it will work. This is
Okay.
just a good place for you to go and see the errors. Let's see what's going on. What happened? Okay,
Okay.
why did it break?
I mean,
Like right now, see, if you make this a little bigger so we can read the messages better.
okay.
Yeah, so this is telling you, hey, you have this thing called production and you're breaking because you can't find it.
Right.
Actually, no, it's telling you, yeah, it's
Yeah.
something like environments production, and then connects is telling you, I cannot find client. So let's go fix it real quick so that you have it working. So let's go back to the code. And you have the same problem that I have. You probably don't have that production key deployed yet. So connects.js, connects-file.js. Yeah, just take the development key, copy it underneath.
What development key?
Line 2 to line 19, you see inside of that object, there is a development key there.
Okay, give me 1 sec.
See, all of that is just a property on that object, the whole thing, all the way to line 19, the whole object.
Oh.
And that whole object right there, all the way. There you go. Copy
Okay.
that. You got to use the shortcuts. Huh? As a developer, you want to, Command C, Command V, Control C, Control V. You want to get into that. That's the thing. So
Okay.
yeah, just don't paste it just yet. Move your arrow cursor because you have it highlighted and it's just gonna overwrite it. So click somewhere in there. Okay, and paste it. So before line 20, somewhere in there, just paste it. Yeah, hit enter and then paste. Command V. Oh no, you lost it. All right, so change the name of it because now you have two development properties on that object and you want to have one that's called production.
Here. So put production here.
Yes. Save that.
Okay. It automatically saves.
Oh, nice. All right, so what do you need to do now if you want Heroku to be aware of that change?
Add, push, commit.
Yep,
That thing.
yep, that's it. Eunice, is that your same problem? Maybe a typo on the app name. And again, you don't need to do that. It's good for troubleshooting errors, but for the deployment process, you need to do it. You could just go to the overview tab and it will show you what's going on when it's deploying and all that. I'm going to show you another way to look at the errors too. If we ever get this thing to work, you never know. Heroku is like unpredictable.
Okay, so I push that.
All right, so let's go to Heroku. Let's not look at the terminal or anything. Just go to Heroku, go to the overview tab. Oh, there you go. That's right there. I see it. It's saying, it's building. It's building. And then once it's done, it's going to say deployed. It's building, it's building, it's building. Come on, Heroku, you can do it. You can do it. Deploy. All right, let's go check out that app. And we need to go to /API/shouts. We want to see anything useful there. Oh no, I think something's broken. All right, so let's go back to your application, the tab for the application, because it's broken. It should have been okay.
Here.
And go to the top right. You see what it says? More. Hey, attention! This is another way of looking at those logs. Remember, view logs. See more view logs. Click that, and this shows you. It's supposed to be running, but look at the problem that you have there. You see
Here?
the port? No, you see the port where you're supposed to be, where you're running? It's running on localhost what?
4,000.
That's not where it's running, really. Did you make the port dynamic? See, it's telling you it cannot bind to that port because you're trying to use 4,000. So you have to make that port dynamic the way that we did it. Okay, where would you go to do that? I see it right there. You're not reading that port from anywhere.
Here?
I see it. You're passing 4,000 there.
Okay, so in order to make it dynamic, it would be the let's see. I forget what it is.
Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay. Here's what, this is the usefulness of this now. This is what we want to do. We want to let Heroku, in this case, whoever is running our application, we want to let them set the port. And the way that you do that is by telling them, hey, I want you to give me something and put it on the environment so that I can use it. So your job here is you want to read the port from the environment. How do you read something from the environment? Process.env. So type that, process.env. This is how you read things from the environment. Dot, and I know this, that it's port. You see uppercase port right there? That's the one that you want to use, yes. Because Heroku is going to give you port like that, uppercase port. So Heroku is going to do that for you. You just need to have your application read it from what Heroku is going to give you. I know you're going to say, if I don't have that, so space, pipe. If I don't have it, like we're not going to have it on development, just give it 4,000 there, and that would be okay.
Does it need to be in quotes or anything?
No, and this is a number, so it shouldn't be in quotes. It should be a number.
Right.
So that's good. Heroku is also going to set that port, and Heroku is going to give you back a number when you ask for it. So you basically here say, hey, I want this port from the environment. And I don't care who's going to put it there. In your case now, you care because it's Heroku. Heroku is going to do it for you automatically. So you save that, and then you need to push again. Yes, Landry, in a sec, I'll address that. Okay, so, well, this is, adding those commits and stuff. Let me go and address some of the questions. So still having problems. Yeah, we can troubleshoot those, don't worry. We could definitely go and see what's going on there. So there's an error on the Heroku logs. Yeah, we need to look at that error specifically to see what's going on there. Um, let's see, invalid credentials. Again, might be a typo on the name of the app. We have to make sure. And also remember that the way that they have it set up, I totally forgot about that, is when you try to access it, it's gonna open the browser, so you have to go and sign in the browser. But it may be a typo with the name. We have to check that. So those errors we have to like look at it together. Let's see if there's another general question. Can I repeat what I said about the data? Yes, Heroku is going to, you have to go /API/shouts to get data. So
Okay.
right now you're going on /. No, that would be here in the browser.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, /API/routes, /shouts. So that's the route. I think the Zoom thing is on your way.
Here?
Yeah, the URL is /API/shouts. That's how we have it set up. At the end, no, don't change that. That's how you get to the app. It's just the routes that you're gonna use. /API/shouts. Ah,
Got it.
excellent. So hopefully some learning happening there. Okay, so
Yeah.
how do we fix it? What do we have to do to fix it?
To fix
This
this?
error. Yeah, how do you fix it?
JSON?
No. You were having problems. What do you have to do in order to fix the problems?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I would have to I guess starting here.
Yeah, this is just a way for you to see the errors. This is all this is. This is giving you an idea so that you can see the console, what's going on in your application. But my question is, how do you fix the errors here? What is it that you had to fix in order to get your application working? Why was it broken?
Because I didn't have the production here.
Uh-huh.
Development production.
Mm-hmm.
And in the other, I had this hard coded as 4,000 port.
Exactly. Right. So Heroku was trying to find a configuration for the database that was named production. We didn't have that, so we had to add it. And also Heroku is going to try and assign a port dynamically using that environment variable. And we were not using it in the application yet. So now our application is ready to use it. So good job.
Because this allows it to choose whatever port it wants to, as opposed to being hard coded to the one that I want it to be.
Exactly that. All right. Cool. Very nice. All right. So let me address, and thank you for sharing. I love it when you do that. So let me address this. Heroku will, every time you deploy, Heroku is going to give you like a brand new, you could think of it as getting like a brand new server. So it's going to clone the stuff that you have on GitHub, and that's going to be your application. Now, the database happens to be one of the files that you have on GitHub. So when you do a commit and you push something to GitHub, the data that is on that file is the data that you're going to get deployed to your application. So the point is that it's not going to keep the database because it's not separate. It's part of your code. It's like another JavaScript file, basically. So all the changes that you have when you push, that's the changes. That's the stuff that you're going to see on Heroku. Now, the way that we normally fix that is you have a separate database server that is not part of your application. So you deploy your application, and there is a database server somewhere else that is holding onto your data. Postgres happens to be one of those database servers. Again, this week you don't know about databases yet. Next week you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But think of a database server as some application that is running somewhere that is holding onto your data and make sure that it's persistent. So what your application does is the same way that you have like a client application connecting to an API using Axios, your application is going to connect your API to the database server, and it's going to say, hey, save this, or hey, give me this data. Okay. So Heroku happens to have a service. I'm going to do this. We're over time now. I'm going to do this and walk through it, but we're not going to go like re-implement it together. Instead, we're going to stop the video there, and then I'm going to troubleshoot your problems. So, but I want to walk you through setting it up so that you have a Heroku data, a Postgres database. Well, no, let's not do it because it's going to be confusing and it's going to hurt you. We're going to do it next week. I promise. I promise we'll do it next week. Okay, that way you can. So know that for now, the changes on your database is going to be wiped out, and you're only going to have the stuff that you push to GitHub. Okay, for today. So next week we'll do it. I promise we're gonna, as soon as you understand about databases, we're gonna push that thing to get it to Heroku and make it super persistent. So why don't we change the node.env production in that env file? Why don't we change it? Oh, no, that was part of an example. So the question is, okay, we have this .env file, we have this thing here, and when I'm running locally, I'm using it as development, but then Heroku is going to change that to be production. So why don't we change it here? Because I want it to be that way. I want it to be different for my local environment. I want to control the value that I use here. But then since I'm reading it dynamically, I'm not reading this directly. Remember that this is not going to be on GitHub. So when you deploy, the node environment is going to set up by who? Heroku. Okay. So since we are reading it, I think is it on default? No, it's here. Since we are reading it the same way that we're reading the port, this will be whatever value is set by Heroku in production. And they always make it production. That's the behavior of all of the hosting providers. It's pretty nice. It's so that you don't have to like manually add them. They give you the port, they give you the environment, they give you other stuff. They give you way more than that. Okay. So we want it to be different on the like on a local environment. Okay, getting easier to read the docs. It's getting easier to read the docs. Yeah, I want you to get used to that because that was one of my pain points. Like one of the things that I struggle the most, I still do. Like I open some documentations. I'm gonna give you an example of one documentation that is like, yeah, I get shivers every time I have to go and deal with that. Where's my thing now to the share? I lost the Zoom thing. Oh, my Zoom. There it is. So let's bring it down here. The Zoom controls. There are some documentations that are really easy to follow. This is one that, yeah, this documentation. This is the #1 library for authentication. It's been for a very long time. Like if you want to add different types of authentication to your application, this is the place to go. We're not going to use it. It's just troubleshooting problems here. It's because of the documentation. Like going in here and reading this, you don't really walk away like, oh, I understand what's going on. So some documentations are harder than others, but you have to get used to reading them and understand what's going on and being able to follow them, follow the instructions, and kind of reading is the trick, but it's not always as simple as just reading because sometimes you don't have like a really good flow. Now on this library though, look, it was so simple that you're like, okay, so I need to install it. All right, I need to add this as early as possible. And here I create the file and this is how the file is structured. So it was easy to do on this simple documentation. So this is a very good skill to have, one that I still struggle today. Like it's hard for me to just jump in and reading documentation. It's not easy. It's like trying to learn English using a dictionary. Exactly, right? They don't have that nice flow of ideas that you can follow. All right, so you can stop the video now, and then anybody else that needs to troubleshoot errors, stay with me. Everybody else